I've always been fortunate at And that TA has always been empowered to be the best version of itself. And so we had a good starting point, but actually we needed a clear direction as to how we were going to get there or get close to that number. Because if you kind of do it with best intentions, but, finger in the air, you're running the risk of either falling short or just not actually knowing how well you're doing.
When you are elongating it, you are missing. Talent is leading the process, and maybe lower caliber candidates or lower relevance candidates for that position staying within the process, they don't have as many opportunities for that type of role because they don't have the same level of experience or skill in that position at that time, right? So you end up missing out on people. And I think that's the main thing there. That was the main win, and certainly it showed on the data on our side. The people having a great experience and people were running through the process nicely.
Being able to connect those dots and being able to, again, empower your team to be the experts in the room and support them and give them that space and that environment where they can be those experts and they can achieve the goals that they've set out as a team or we've set out as a business unit.
Nick, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's awesome. And we spent plenty of time together. And after you were speaking at RecFest last week on our stage, I thought, well, we have to replay the content that had people queuing out of the door to come and hear about the impact that you've had and over a number of years. So yeah, pleasure to have you on the show. And let's do a quick introduction for those that don't know who you are. I'd love to get an idea of you, background, and your role at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Nick Brough. I am the Chief for Hub Operations in London at And Digital. For those of you that don't know, And Digital is a professional services business, and we work to guide, build and equip our clients with digital capabilities to help close the digital skills gap, really. And whilst I am in operations now, my background is very much within recruitment, through from agency to in-house and then working into operations here at And.
Yeah, awesome. And I love that journey. We're definitely going to come to that from talent acquisition through to operations. I think there's so much that can be learned from that and so much that we need to be doing as a talent acquisition industry when thinking about the wider workings of the business. And also, I can tell you've been working at And for a while because your delivery of exactly what And did sounded perfect. That could have been a soundbite for him.
It's all those candidate calls over the years. I've got the And pitch down to a T now, I think.
Nailed it. And I think, for context for viewers, when we were at RecFest, we were really talking about the commercial impact of the talent acquisition function, which has been a big focus of the podcast so far this year and will continue to be one. And I think the way in which you approached kind of a scale-up business and building out the function and thinking about the process lent itself to reducing time to hire. But I would love to kind of expand out, first and foremost, I suppose, what was the mission statement of the organization at the front end to lead to this change process, and then we'll come to the process.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So, back when the company was established in 2014, Ant had a very clear BHAG. For people that don't know, BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. And in 2014, it was quite simple. It was to build a remarkable company by 2027. And there were many elements to that, having accelerated digital aspirations, being different on the inside. But the key one from my perspective and from a TA perspective was to have fast growth effectively. We wanted to be one of the top 10 fastest growing businesses in 2014. By 2019, we wanted to get to 500 people and have that reflected in the revenue coming in. And, when I joined in August 2019, we were pretty much there. I think it was around about 450 people when I joined. So we pretty much got to that BHAG for 2019. And then at that point, it was then planning ahead and looking ahead to, 2025, where do we want to be? And the thought to that was in 2025, we want to have that 10x growth again. And we want to go from 500 people to 5,000 people, which, is right across the business and not just within London. But, for any TA function, it's quite a daunting number. And it's not really something that I particularly dwelled on in terms of get to that 5,000. But, when I did become, I was fortunate enough to land the recruitment lead position for London in early 2021, we had to really look at that and go, okay, well, we're at, I think it was around about, I may be wrong here, but around about 1,000 people. We've effectively got 4 years to get another 4,000 Andys in at that time. And Andys are employees at And Digital. We needed a clear strategy in place to kind of scale at that level. And, we had a great team. We had a great setup. And I've always been fortunate at And that, TA has always been empowered to be the best version of itself. And so we had a good starting point, but actually we needed a clear direction of as to how we were going to get there or get close to that number. Because if you kind of do it with best intentions, but, finger in the air, you're running the risk of either falling short or just not actually knowing how well you're doing and whether you're on track to achieve, regardless of the numbers that you're on. So it was something that was new to me, getting a very clear strategy in place, but it was something that I had to get down on paper, get out of my head and really plan how we were going to get to that point.
Yeah. And I think, if you track back to that business objective, I think what's unique in some ways for businesses like And is, well, people are the direct reflection of the revenue that you're going to generate. And it's impossible for them. Like, people growth is directly tied to revenue growth. So it does sort of give a little bit more credence to, TA's position within the business. But I think, what you then did beyond that and, what we've seen having working with you guys is, I suppose, take that to the next level in terms of TA enablement and empowerment across the organization. And I think it's a lot which many other orgs would see as like a nirvana state to be, with something like the license to hire and bits where, I suppose you've got the autonomy. So I would love to speak about that process, delve in a bit deeper and look at, I suppose, the strategy that then led to, facilitating that fast growth, making sure you still had the quality coming in, but getting to that end goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that I kind of thought about, like I say, it was new to me creating a strategy. And what I first had to think about, is what is a strategy? Because I kind of, I touched upon it in my talk at RecFest, but generally in my experience, and not to pigeonhole anything, but recruiters are very good at doing. You need a role filled, you need a team built out, whatever it might be. The top recruiters are unbelievable in getting that done and being a dog with a bone in terms of achieving that. Sometimes if it's particularly new to functions where it is more about doing and achieving these numbers individually, putting things onto paper and creating a strategy can seem quite daunting. And it certainly did to me at first. And what was really important to me is go, well, look, we don't need to overcomplicate this. From my point of view, creating a strategy was getting a clear set of ideas that get you towards that end result, making sure that they're all interconnected to get you towards that end result, and then breaking it down whether it's monthly, yearly, and planning it out from there. So there were a few things when I kind of sat down and thought about it, we needed to achieve. And some of them we were pretty much already doing. Some of them we weren't already doing. And some of them just needed to be kind of formalized, really. So, we'd look at things like, who are your recruiters? What do you want from a recruitment team? It's all well and good having good recruiters. But actually, if I need to grow out this team to achieve anywhere close to this level of scale, I need to be very clear on what it is that I'm looking for. Measuring your success, success isn't looking at that 4,000 people in 4 years. Success is, what are we doing right now, next month, next quarter, and so on there. And then it's having a very clear, very defined process and sticking to that, make sure that the recruiters understand it and the wider business understands it as well. What was really important for me, and you touched upon it already, but make sure that our team is empowered to be the best version of themselves, to get the achievements that we need to hit. Being driven by data, again, most TA functions, if we'll already be doing this or we'll hear about being data-driven recruiters, comes up all the time. For us, it was having recruiters at source and, recruiters that can be proactive. And, we're a business that isn't fortunate enough to just rely on incoming applications and incoming traffic. We've got to go out there. If we want to get the best talent, we've got to go out there and find that best talent. And then it's having the right team ethic, the right team set up, and having a very clear set of non-negotiables as to how we conduct ourselves as a team.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, some of the bits which, always really struck me as well, like, absolutely, you've got to have that stakeholder buy-in. You've got to have the right team in place to build at scale and at pace. But it was also some of like the process bits. I don't know how much of that you can share in terms of like what that hiring process looked like from inception all the way through to like that end point to enable that pace.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where being empowered really comes into it. So once we had our team built out and we had the right recruitment talent that we needed to achieve our targets, it was a case of, well, what does our process look like? Because, again, I touched upon it in my talk, but people talk about, it's a candidate market or it's a client or employer's market. From my point of view, it was understanding that if you want to get the best talent, it is always a candidate market. And you can't, for lack of a better word, you can't be arrogant enough to go, well, look, there's plenty of talent out there. We'll make them jump hurdle after hurdle to make sure that we're 100% certain on this. Because if you do that, if you have 3 stages, 4 stages, if all your CVs need to go through the hiring managers, you will get candidates through the door and you will get some good candidates through the door. but you won't scale at the level you need to, or you won't scale with the right talent that you need to. So we had a version of this already created and already built out that we were running with in London, but it was really a case of formalizing this. So, right from the beginning, you have recruiters that are going out and sourcing, or even if it is incoming applications, because we do still get them, of course, my recruiters were empowered enough to, at the beginning of the process, be the decision makers. So much like many TA functions, you'd have the recruiters doing their screening. They'd have a half-hour call with the candidate, 45 minutes, whatever they need there. They'd go through what I call the recruitment admin, their availability, the salary that they're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. But actually, I had the right talent and the right experience where it would be the recruiters at that beginning point assessing those candidates. So, whether we're talking about developers, whether we're talking about analysts, DevOps, testing, whatever it might be, my recruiters were able to speak to those candidates and in that 30-minute point, be able to assess if this candidate is right to be pushed through to the first interview stage. Sometimes it would be a case where you'd go through to the hiring manager and you get a bit of a sense check. Maybe they come to me as a recruitment lead, but effectively when they're on a call with that candidate, they have a very good idea as to whether this candidate is right to go forward for an interview. And we're not talking about whether they're right to get the job and be hired there and then. That's why everyone has the interview process, of course. But when they're on the phone with the candidate, they will make that decision. So it could be after the phone call, they might go away, review their notes, think about it. It might be during that phone call, they can go, right, this candidate is going through to interview. So they're not sitting there, sending it off to the hiring manager. They're on holiday for a week. They come back next week. They've played a few days of catch up. And then almost a week and a half later, they're going, okay, yeah, we want to push ahead with that candidate. Meanwhile, they're already at final stage or they've already got an offer. So they would make that decision there and then. They would push them through to the first interview stage if they made that decision too. We have a pool of interviewers. So if you're interviewing for a JavaScript developer, for example, we'll have a pool of our JavaScript interviewers where we have their availability. The interviewer can have a look. They can, whilst they're on that first phone call with the candidate, they can go, okay, I'm really keen for you to go forward for interview. If you're happy to go ahead with this, we've got availability Tuesday at 9:30. Could you do that? And what was really important to us at that point is that by the time they've finished that screening call, not always, but the candidate could be booked in for their first stage interview. Already there, you're saving potentially upwards of a week and a half. So the candidate's booked in for that interview. They do their first stage interview. Generally, this was post-COVID, so generally on Google Meets, Zoom, whatever it might be. And during that technical interview, the interviewer will make a decision. So it won't be an interview with the direct hiring manager. They're not thinking, is this person right for my team here? Because at AND, to scale at the level we needed to, we knew what we would look for across the business for a JavaScript developer, a .NET developer, a business analyst, whatever it might be. So the interviewer is there to answer two questions, basically. One, is this candidate right to proceed to the next stage? And two, what level do they come in at? So we have three main levels of senior hiring: level 3, 4, 5, mid-level, senior, tech lead, very roughly. So at the end of that interview, they would say, yep, this candidate, they're good. We're good to progress them through to the second stage. And they come in at a level 3, a level 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, for example. Now, that answers our questions in the sense of, we need for this role a level 3 JavaScript developer. So we go, yeah, they're a level 3 and they're good to progress from a technical point of view. They're not assessing anything else except for their technical ability. Now, after that, what's really good here is that for AND and how our salaries are worked is they're assigned to each level and each sub-level. So 3 sub-levels within each one. And the salaries are related directly to that level. So what it means is every 3.1 developer in the business is paid the same salary as every other 3.1 developer in the business, with some slight geographical nuances for London weight and everything along with that. So at that point, the closing process is really well underway there, because before they've even sat down for their final stage, which is the second stage, they already have a very clear idea as to what the salary offer is going to be. So they're not jumping through hoops, getting to an offer stage, and then they're being offered 15 grand below what they were looking for anyway. They've got a very clear idea. So that closing process has already started. Then after that, they will have their culture ad interview. Really important for us that it's not culture fit, it's culture ad. We're not looking for a bunch of clones of people within the business. We're looking for individuals, and we're looking for, do they add to the culture of AND? So this interview, again, it's not with the hiring manager. AND has one view of culture AND, and it's, do they share our core values of wonder, share, and delight? And we're having a look from that point of view. Not do they fit into a particular team because a hiring manager likes this particular type of person, because then you add the bias in there. It's looking at, do they add to the AND digital culture? After that interview, yes or no? Do they match that culture fit? Culture ad, sorry. And then at that point, for us, for our level 3, 4, and 5 roles, if they've passed both interviews, they're the level that we need them to be, they're the technical ability we need them to be, and they're adding to our culture. We're not then waiting for another 5 candidates to interview for this particular role, just to see if there's maybe someone else better out there. We're going, well, they fit what we need as a business. They're keen and they're ready, and we're ready to offer them. So why do we risk waiting another 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to make the decision and then lose the best talent? If we're happy with this, then the interviewer would be empowered to move to offer at that point. There's always some nuance again where there may be a very niche particular role with our principal and lead type roles. Then we would have another interview stage in there with the club executive, the leader of that BU. But generally, we would make that decision there and then, because it would go through me as a recruitment lead to make sure we're content with that. But it just means we're really, really condensing this process whilst being thorough and consistent enough to make sure we're bringing in the best talent and the right people. And, you know, like with any interview process in any business in the world, it's not a complete fault-free thing. You could do 8 stages. You can still get it wrong. And some things just happen beyond what you can tell in any number of interviews. It's not a 100% foolproof method, no matter what. So it was about making sure that we've got the interviews designed and created by our technical experts and our recruitment function, that we can assess the right candidate to the best of our abilities. And actually, our probation fail rate was less than 5% over this period. So generally, we were bringing in the right people and they were producing the right results. But we managed to absolutely slash our time to hire by, I think, around about half compared to how it was previously.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's great results. And, you know, when we think about the piece there, actually, you know, when you're adding in those days into the process, when you are elongating it, you are missing out. Talent is leaving the process, and maybe lower caliber candidates or lower relevance candidates for that position staying within the process because they don't have as many opportunities for that type of role because they don't have the same level of experience or skill in that position at that time, right? So, you know, you end up missing out on people. I think that's the main thing there. That was the main win, and certainly it showed on the data on our side, you know, the people having a great experience and people were running through the process nicely. I think that first part though is a bit to pick up on for anybody watching. It's like, you know, if your recruitment team in any level isn't empowered enough to take the initial screening call and move them through to that first stage interview, that's where you're missing out. Yeah. You know, we worked with a number of brands last year who had that process, and we were showing them, you know, particularly for female candidates, particularly for senior female candidates in tech, you know, a cohort of individuals that most organizations are trying to target to balance, you know, their gender representation. Well, they are statistically more likely, female candidates are statistically more likely to leave the process when waiting because they will be in more processes than their male counterparts, because that is just, yeah, the data does not tell any other story but that. So, you know, you're limiting your diversity efforts, but you're also limiting your ability, right? Because if you've got candidates dropping out at that stage, whether you're then starting the funnel again, and again, it's just this like perpetuating cycle. I think the bit which is maybe then harder for other organizations when we think about it is like that next phase where, cool, they've passed all the interview stages and then the recruiter is making the conscious hiring decisions. I'm not sure that can work in every business, but again, it's a really interesting approach of thinking about how can you drop people into the right environments, regardless, like as long as they meet the technical bar, as long as they meet the cultural bar, well, actually it doesn't really matter what team they sit in because, you know, that requirement's been met. So I think it's brave and it obviously works for And. I'm not sure it worked for everybody, but that first part should work for everybody. And the second part on the salary banding attached to the roles, you're always talking about salary transparency and salary equity and all of these things. You know, move gender to one side, which is obviously a really important issue. Actually, just across the board, people want to be known, you know, to what salary they're being paid. And I saw some clips, one of those clips that just surfaces and circulates on LinkedIn, and it was like Pimlico plumbers, right? And there was a set of plumbers in front, and they were all paid a different rate, and most of them were doing the same job, and it just creates a discourse internally, right? So being upfront on that not only helps with that closing the candidate before that final call, but also helps just with your own internal culture, right?
It does. You know, when we're doing these screening calls with candidates at the beginning, we can be very transparent and we can share our salary bandings. We don't hide them away. We don't advertise them on our roles because we don't know what level someone's going to come in. But we can go, look, based on our assessment of you, I expect you're going to come in around the level 3 mark. These are the salaries for level 3. you might come in at level 4. These are the salaries here. So they know that it doesn't come down to we're particularly desperate to hire this role at this particular time, or, the hiring manager particularly likes you over other people, or it's someone that's been referred in so they get a higher salary. It doesn't always work how we want it to. And sometimes candidates will come in at a lower level than they need their salary to be. And it's frustrating when that happens. But it just means we stick to our guns and we are completely consistent in this approach. And in the long run, it works out far more favorably than those ones where you sometimes miss out on top talents because they're not at that level you need them to be.
And then I think the other bits which have always been, really great to watch from the sidelines is that, like you say, that kind of pool of interviewers who are there, who can jump in, and it doesn't really matter if it's for their business unit or not. Like, you're going to be hiring JavaScript, so move them into that technical interview, and then the culture of being, the same unanimous across the board, like the same kind of assessment, which again just allows for that faster process. And then all of this then comes together, right? And it's like what we were speaking about at RecFest and what we speak about at length, which is, well, then how do we play that back to the business? Because if the probation period's being met, if the quality of hire is there, well, actually there's a massive net benefit to the organization of running a more efficient process, not just because of candidate experience, recruiter experience, hiring manager experience, but true revenue generation and project impact, right?
Yeah, I mean, for us being in professional services, it's a lot easier to kind of quantify it because, this could be the difference by cutting down the time to hire by 20 days, 30 days, whatever it might be. This is more opportunity for this candidate to go and start providing these services for one of our clients. And this is direct revenue coming in far more quickly than if we had an elongated process, or if we didn't use the right tools and the time to hire was longer. It's not always, and it doesn't work out as an exact science, but it's direct revenue absolutely coming in. And even if you're not, professional services, this is the impact that whatever reason this role is being hired for, this is the real world impact. This might be speeding up the software release. It could be so many things, but this is direct impact on revenue, whether it's easy to quantify or whether it's not.
Yeah, and I think that one on easy to quantify or not, I shared, examples with somebody called Tush. If you're watching, this one's for you. He said everybody's got an intrinsic value within every organization. It's their base salary plus bonus, and divide that by the number of days. And if somebody starts 24 days faster, well, that is their inherent value to the organization. If you really wanted to break it down neatly, which I thought was a great way of kind of framing it, if you're not in professional services, of that empty chair cost impact on the org. Because beyond that, like you could be overreaching in terms of the impact. Like in your setting, you can absolutely tie the revenue generated if you're able to get people onto sites faster, but you probably couldn't attribute, new business wins or project delivery timeframes to too much of an extent, because obviously there's huge teams, lots of processes, lots of variables that lead to that. And actually part of this, we said we'd come to, and I think it's critical, is that, you've moved from a recruitment role into an operations role. Yeah, talk to me. How did that first come about? Because I've never actually even asked you that as well. How that first came about.
Yeah, it's not something that I've spoken about too much. I mean, I started the Chief for Hub Operations role in London in only May, just gone. So it's still a relatively new period for me. Look, I've been in recruitment for 10 years now. So I joined, I only ever worked for one agency, and I've only ever worked for one in-house company as well. But I joined agency in 2014, had 5 amazing years there with a business called Hanover. That top agency. It was a great way for me to kind of cut my teeth in the world of recruitment and get to understand tech, importantly, because I didn't have a clue about it before I joined. And it was a really great way working with different clients, hiring different roles. Every other day I was probably Googling a new terminology, a new language, whatever it might be, to just understand it. So 10 amazing years in recruitment. And, when I joined and in 2019, I didn't have a clear path that I wanted to go down. I knew I was good at recruitment. I loved doing recruitment. I love talking. Anyone that knows me knows how much I love talking. And, it was something that allowed me to get paid to talk, which is always helpful. I didn't have a clear idea, but in she'll kill me for getting it wrong. I think it was around 2021. My boss at the time, Lauren, she joined the business as in the role that I'm doing now. And, I had a great relationship with her. She comes from a recruitment background and she understood recruitment, and it helped me to become a better lead, having this person working alongside me that understood the challenges, the struggles, and where we can provide that value. And I learned a hell of a lot from her. And I think it was probably a year or so in, maybe less, we kind of sat down down. And, you know, as all good leaders do, kind of, she spoke about, well, you know, what do you want to be doing long term? It was kind of like, oh, actually, I was kind of like recruitment lead now. Where do I go next in recruitment? And I got to learn more about her role. And for us, chief for operations sits within the relevant hub. So, of course, mine is London, and chief for operations here essentially leads the business unit that heads up recruitment, graduate recruitment, which sits as a separate role, agile coaching, learning and development, and employee onboarding. And I kind of thought, well, you know, this could be a really good path to go down. I think Lauren and I share very similar qualities. We're very different, of course, in how we work, but we do share a lot of similar qualities. And once we started kind of talking about this more, and because I had that kind of solid working relationship with her, she kind of helped upskill me in terms of, okay, well, if I want to progress up to this next role, I need to start thinking about it now. I can't think about it in 3 months before an opportunity becomes available. And at And, we have a very, very good exec development team. They work with you to kind of, if you're progressing to one of these, what we call pioneer roles in And, they will work with you to get a full understanding of where your skills are, where you're strong, and where you need to improve these skills. So I think it was well over a year that I was on this official pioneer development program. And, you know, what was important for me in understanding is that in operations roles, you don't need to be an expert in everything. You know, I've never been an agile coach. I've hired them, but I've never been an agile coach. I'm not from an L&D background. And it's understanding that it's not there to be the expert in the room for every single part of your role and every part of the BU, but it's to be there as a leader and work on your leadership skills to empower your leads that are the experts in those areas to be the best versions of themselves. And, you know, I was fortunate that I had an amazing set of leads that I was working alongside as colleagues, and they helped me upskill in these particular areas. And we have that solid relationship where as I step into this role, I'm able to work with them and still learn from them. And, you know, it's a cliche phrase, but every day is a school day. And, you know, you could talk to me about recruitment, and when I'm running on that side of things, it's a lot easier, a lot more natural for me. But then when it's stepping into conversations and making the context switch from one call to the next about different areas, it's about being able to connect those dots and being able to, again, empower your team to be the experts in the room and support them and give them that space and that environment where they can be those experts and they can achieve the goals that they've set out as a team, or we've set out as a business unit to achieve. So it's kind of, I've always felt, not always, I've made many mistakes in people leadership and I've learned from them. And I spoke about it in the Breakfast Talk. My biggest lesson in leadership is not focusing on the good things. Yeah, they're great to have, but it's focusing on the mistakes that you make, because everyone makes mistakes. And when it comes to leadership, it's people working with people. Mistakes are made, but it's about learning from them, adjusting your style and adjusting how you work as a leader to become better and to be able to work with a variety of different people. That's the aspect that really matters for me in this particular type of role. It's being that people leader and not worrying about being that subject matter expert all the time, but be able to have the right people and the right conversations and empower them to be those experts.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, what's really nice about the role in which you're in is really, you know, in my view, where talent acquisition needs to go as a function, right? It should be owning the entire people process, thinking about the business problem and how you solve that through, you know, the application of skills and human beings and how it all interconnects and how all of those parts play a role in serving the business. It's not just the acquisition of talent, it's that recruitment versus resourcing. I think it's that subtlety between it. You know, recruitment is, you know, the process. Resourcing is thinking of the overall strategy. And I think that's just such an important distinction to make. And it's like that people versus talent acquisition style function. It feels more like a people function on your side. And of course, operations is then tied to the business because it's a people business where you're generating, you know, the revenue and that's, you know, that's the core of what you do. So yeah, I think fascinating. And then I suppose for like others, obviously you're taking a lot of learning from people internally. If you're sitting there in a talent acquisition lead or manager or, you know, any talent acquisition role now, like what do you see as the easiest transfer of those different areas to start to pick up and, you know, play back into your kind of day-to-day recruitment role? Like, what's some of the other things people should be interested in first?
I think for me, one of the key things and something that was a big kind of, it was a learning curve for me, and that, you know, it wasn't something that with my background I was used to, but think about the bigger picture. and I'd say it with my recruitment team, and I'd say it to anyone else in a similar situation, if you're looking to kind of grow out and progress your own career, is don't just think about the here and now. Think about tomorrow, think about next quarter, next year, whatever it might be, and think about the why. That's a big thing, not just doing and not just doing well like so many top recruiters do. Is think about, why am I doing this? What is the business by me landing this hire, by me landing this team, whatever it might be? Why am I doing this? Not just because it's a role to tick off, not just because it's a number towards my target. What's the bigger picture here? What's the one thread running through your business? And for our business, it's closing the world's digital skills gap. It's going back to that and going, this role I'm hiring, this team I'm launching, how is this working towards our golden thread of closing the world digital skills gap? And be able to do that, it adds so much to your day-to-day, because you do provide more value in your day-to-day on recruitment, but it also sets you up in terms of if you are looking for a leadership role, whether it's operations, whether it's in recruitment, whatever it might be, it sets you up to really think from a strategic point of view, to be able to create strategies, even if they're mini strategies within how you're going to approach a set of hiring. Even that, just thinking about that bigger picture, it was definitely a learning curve for me. I did a lot of reading on it and a lot of one-on-one training with some of our excellent trainers in the business, but that was a big one for me. And you can do that whether you're a sourcer, a recruitment manager, head of recruitment, whatever it is. You might already be doing it, but if you're not, I would massively recommend that to everyone. Think about that bigger picture.
It is, not just what are the skills attached to this job, what else am I looking for, etc. Why are we hiring this person? Why are these requisitions open? Like, what's the project that they're going to be attached to? And beyond, hey, I need to be able to inform the candidate. Okay, cool. So it helps you then prioritize. It helps you partner with the business in a more effective way, be a true consultant. And then, okay, cool, we're doing these hires now. What does that mean for 18 months time? What does that mean for 24 months time? Let me come back to you. I've got some insights of what's going on in the market and who else is hiring for these types of positions. Coming back as the expert in the room and making sure that you're trumpeting that back up as well. Like, it's not just a case of, hey, we made this hire and X operational recruitment metric has improved by Y.
Yeah.
Actually, here's the bigger picture stuff. And I'm totally with you. Like, yeah, absolutely can happen at any level for any role that you're in. And, it's not just held to recruitment either. This is every function, every part of the business should be thinking about that. And it's often easy to be given a task or have a task that needs to be done, and it just be cool. We need to go from A to B, and these are the steps along the way, and let me know if there's any challenge. To this is why we're doing it. This is the context. This is why it's important. So, absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, sir, having you on. I think a couple of key learnings just to play back as I close out the show is really, I think, in that front end, when we're thinking about process, it was the mission statement from the business was clear, the BHAG as you called it, and then the thread that then played into that was, well, actually, how do we facilitate this? And it was all around recruiter enablement. It was all about allowing the team to kind of step forward and take the ownership, and having the flexibility in the structure and the buy-in internally to reduce that kind of critical element, which was time to hire, and then making sure those hygiene metrics were in place afterwards. And then I think your kind of personal journey into an operations role is awesome and great to see. And for others watching, what are those other little pieces that you can bite off? What are those other areas that you can start to dip your toe into and give yourself a broader set of skills, which it's learning agility, right? It's the ability to pick up new things, and then it's that hunger to want to do it. I think some kind of salient advice there. So thank you, buddy, for being on.
Thank you, mate. Really appreciate you having me, Sam.
Yeah, awesome.